Hey, welcome. If you have ever wanted to share your faith, talk about Jesus with the people around you, but maybe feel a little bit stuck or unsure about how to get started in that, we would love to help you out by offering a few tips on how to do that in your neighborhood, specifically today. We have with us a wonderful new addition to the SBCC family, Zach and Allison Nance. We are thrilled that you guys are here with us today and wanted to bring you guys in because we know that this is a really big part of your story. Your sense of calling to Japan will continue to be a major part of your ministry wherever you go. It's just part of who you are, really. Zach and Allison have been a wonderful example of how to be a missional presence in every neighborhood that they've been in. So I think we have a lot of wisdom and examples and experience to draw from you guys. So thanks for being willing to share that with us today. Maybe you guys could just get us started in today's conversation by telling us a little bit of your background in that area. What have your neighborhoods and apartment complexes look like, and a couple of stories maybe of some neighbors that you've interacted with?
Sure. Yeah. I think one key element in our story was when we were relocating to a different part of Houston to aid in planting a new church. And we were under contract for a house and had started moving in. And then 3 weeks later, Hurricane Harvey rolled through town, and the house that we were moving into got completely destroyed. So because of that, Zach's company actually ended up putting us up in corporate housing in a different part of town that we weren't really familiar with. And, we were a little bit confused as to what God would have us do with our ministry and, where he wanted us to be. But it was during that time that he really opened our eyes to different doors to evangelism and building relationships with our neighbors.
Yeah, no. During that time when we transitioned into that place, another apartment complex, it was really rough because we weren't really sure what kind of God was doing with that and where we were supposed to be in that, and God really used that time to open our eyes to just being here, present here and now, with our neighbors and in our community. And we were there a couple of weeks, and the house was ruined, had no furniture, lived in a corporate housing, so it was all borrowed stuff. But we got to meet two wonderful Turkish families and a Japanese family that we're still really close with today. I remember one of the first kind of times I got to come into contact and engage them was I was doing something for school. I was researching and writing this paper and had all these theology books out down in this kind of business room. Most apartment complexes have something like that. And so I had all this stuff spread out, and in walk in these two guys, just having this great conversation in Turkish, and I thought it was really kind of cool. Wanted to introduce myself, and so I kind of put all this theology stuff aside, and got to hear a little bit from them, and they had such a cool backstory and such a cool story of how they've been moved here, what all the events that took place to move them here to the U.S., and how they've transitioned in this apartment and the American life and that kind of stuff. I was so engrossed in that. All this stuff went to the side, but they eventually took notice and started asking questions, and that was a wonderful open door, and I believe the Lord just sort of put that there, or very organically, to walk into it and to share our faith and to share our lives and what God's been up to. And like I said before, in that space, we didn't have much to speak of in terms of possession, but one of the things that I think was a great reminder that the Lord put in front of us was we don't need material possessions to walk in the way that the Lord's called us to walk. We can freely step into that no matter where we are, no matter what we have. I think God's provision is far and above what we need in certain circumstances.
Yeah. First of all, I'm sorry that you guys had to deal with the hurricane, and that's devastating and frustrating in a lot of ways. But also, praise the Lord that He repositioned you guys to engage with these Turkish families, Japanese family as well, as you mentioned, off camera. And I love the point that you made that it doesn't really matter how much stuff we have or what neighborhood we're in, even if it's not what we planned or it's not our dream destination. God can and absolutely will still use you wherever He's got you, with whatever's in your drawers and pantries and furnishings and all that kind of stuff. So thank you for being such a wonderful, faithful example of that. Appreciate that. Let's kind of start breaking down this idea of being a missional neighbor, and talk about some actionable steps, or kind of the process for how we can be an intentional witness on your block or in your complex. And I think we could probably talk about this in 3 areas or 3 angles: preparation, presence, and proclamation. Preparation: what steps do we need to take to get ready to be a good Christian witness in our neighborhood? Second, presence: how can we be loving, gracious, evangelistic neighbors? And then third, proclamation: how do we actually start having faith conversations with the people around us? So maybe first, let's talk about how to get ready to live missionally in our neighborhood. Preparation. What do we need to do?
Yeah, I think preparing, the order you set it up, and preparing our hearts, preparing our lives, and preparing our schedules for that is crucial. And I think creating margin in our schedules, in our routines, just in our day-to-day life, I think is a huge thing as well. Because if we can budget for God's sort of leading in our lives, then we can more freely walk into those very organic relationships He tends to bring up. And one of the things that we tend to do, because I know I'm bad about it, is just filling our schedules to the brink. And I think busyness becomes the enemy of availability, especially to neighbors, and to reaching out and just offering a caring hand or serve them in some way. And these events, they might not be super convenient for us when they happen. So that's why building in margin is, even from one activity to the next, a little bit of space. If a conversation comes up, leave some room for that, and kind of push what you can to the side, just so you can be there present with them.
Yeah, that's a great point. That might take some sacrifice. You're going to have to say goodbye to something on your calendar that maybe you held dear, but it's worth it. That might create some space for a faith conversation with your neighbors. So I think you're right on, 100% agree. And that sets us up for the next one, which is just being outside. That's our second tip: be outside, because that's where your neighbors are going to be. So if your schedule is so full that you're coming home from the office at 9 p.m. every day, you're going to miss those opportunities where your neighbors are walking by your front fence and are outside playing basketball and having picnics and all that kind of thing. So just getting outside during the day when other people are outside, we're just after work, 5 p.m., that kind of thing, can be a really helpful way to prepare for evangelistic conversations in your neighborhood. Sit in the front yard, eat dinner out there, things like that. Go take walks after dinner. And when you take walks, maybe take out the earbuds and be ready to make eye contact and be warm and accessible and friendly and smile and all that kind of thing. So all that stuff gets you ready.
Yeah, and we can plant a garden outside is another way to be out there. Instead of being in the backyard, move it to the front. Or try and take out your trash when you know your neighbors are going to do that. People are often stopping to talk to us about how tall our sunflowers have grown or our newest chalk art. So just by being outside often, we create spaces for connections to happen. And sometimes it takes a little bit of overcoming some mental or emotional or spiritual stumbling blocks. So what are some ways we can do that in order to establish community?
Yeah, I think, well, definitely for me, going through, seeing a home you thought you were going to be in destroyed, like, it definitely took me some time to, kind of feel like I would even be ready to kind of start having conversations with people in the apartment complex that we were in. But, the Lord is really good, and He can use like the smallest things to kind of get us outside. And one of those things was when our daughter Kayla wanted to go play at the playground down at the apartment complex. And I just really wasn't feeling it like at all. But we ended up going downstairs, and we had been there for a few minutes when this little boy came running across to us from the other side of the playground, shouting, hi, and, didn't really speak much English or anything, but we realized as, his mother and I kind of started trying to have a conversation that they had just moved from Japan. And, of course, Japan was a place that the Lord had put on our hearts. And so it just really confirmed for us, I think, getting to know their family more, the Lord's desire for us to, be in Japan more. And it was just a really beautiful and simple doorway for our family to walk through. Colossians 4:5-6 says, take advantage of every opportunity that you have. And, if you're waiting for a moment to feel like you're ready, to start evangelizing, or even ready to just begin a new relationship with your neighbors, we could miss opportunities like that. And so I think that was one thing, that really kind of challenged us and encouraged us.
Yeah, that's a really good insight, to pay attention and work through some of those internal, maybe even lies from the enemy, that you're not ready, you're not good enough, you're not emotionally in a position to do it. Just go, and take advantage of every opportunity, like Colossians 4 says. That's a great word. In addition to some of these tips to prepare, I would add, just be praying for opportunities. Ask God, Lord, send neighbors my way. Help set up a conversation for me. I want to connect with neighbors. Ask the Lord for this in your own personal prayer rhythms and routine. Pray with your life group. Pray with your family for these things. And the Lord will certainly bring them your way. What would you add to that, Zach?
I would have to 100% agree with prayer. And that's maybe another thing that we don't give as much credit to, is that's maybe the biggest thing we can do as a Christian witness. And I don't think it's at all overshooting it to say that bringing them and their story or concerns before God in prayer is by far the greatest weapon that we can have, and even just to start engaging in that. And I think a lot of that stuff might come out just in conversation, and it's never harmful to ask if their comfort level allows for this. How can I pray for you? How can we be in prayer for you? Or hey, gosh, even if they're ready, just pray for them right there. And a lot of times you'll see God do amazing things in that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So ways to prepare for living missionally in our neighborhood, where, like we talked about, make margin, create space for it. Go outside, be warm and accessible and open, and create connection points, gardens and chalk arts and kids and playgrounds. All those kinds of connection points are great. Assessing, like Allison mentioned, really good insight, assessing those internal struggles and obstacles that you want to ask the Lord to help you to overcome, so that you can take advantage of these opportunities. Be praying for opportunities and for your neighbors specifically, and let the Lord use this to lay the groundwork for what comes next, which is presence. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that. Some important characteristics of being a purposeful, intentional Christian presence in your neighborhood. What does that look like? Where do we start with that, Zach?
I often just have to go back to Jesus in the Gospels, and how he came to self-sacrificially just serve and be there to love and to care for those around him. And a lot of ways that I think can naturally open up for us comes through listening, and using, there's that old adage, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so listen twice as much as you speak. But I think there's an undervalued sort of thing there of hearing your neighbor, understanding where they are, their story, where they're at. And a lot of that stuff, like we mentioned before, kind of comes out organically in that builds that comfort level relationally with them. And how that can be just a great way to sort of transition into gospel conversations and maybe speaking into their life a little easier.
Totally. And when you're listening to somebody, they're going to be sharing important details, likely, things that have happened in their life recently, and they'll be signaling, this is something I'd like you to care about. This is something very important to me. And so another tip, I want to encourage you to do your best work to remember those details, and then follow up later, that their husband maybe is recovering from hip surgery. How's that going? How's he feeling today? Is there anything I can do to help? That kind of interaction gets set up when we listen well and then follow up on details. Or maybe that person's grandmother passed away recently, and just ask, how are you feeling today? Is there any way I can help you out or care for you? Also, make sure, I can't believe this detail, I forgot this detail earlier, but just remember names. Exchange names, introduce yourself, and remember the names of your neighbors. So you're not like, hey, you, that whole dynamic, awkward. Remember details, remember names.
Sure, and we can look for other connecting moments and things to celebrate, like a baby shower or a birthday. If a new neighbor's moving in, we definitely want to make them feel welcome. If a neighbor's car's battery's dead, let's help them jump it. So just be ready to jump in and celebrate and help. And shout out to Lewis, who on our neighborhood, when we moved in at the beginning of the pandemic, he welcomed us with a big package of toilet paper. So even small things can start to build relationships.
Yeah, exactly. It really is like those smaller things. Like I know in COVID, like toilet paper was like gold. So that's like even the gestures that we think might be like silly or small, or even something that the enemy might be like, that's silly. Like why are you even bringing this up to your neighbor? But even those small things, like the Lord can use. So.
Mm-hmm. And as we get to know our neighbors more and become more familiar, then we can start inviting them into events. And we were able to invite some kids to VBS and take them last summer. Well, it wasn't last summer.
2 years ago.
Yeah, because no COVID. Yeah. But we were able to take kids to VBS with us just because it was easy and natural to invite them because we're already part of each other's lives. And another part of living in close proximity with neighbors is that we really get to see each other's dysfunction, which we all have. But those also create opportunities for good conflict resolution and forgiveness and modeling grace and building friendships with our neighbors.
Yeah, and so those kinds of challenges are just natural in human life and being in close proximity with other people. And I think that takes us to the next tip or point is just I want to encourage you to bear with the annoying stuff or those challenges, the difficult things that you're presented with as a neighbor. For example, in any urban context really, but especially in the South Bay, I know you all feel this, that it's kind of hard to find parking sometimes. And so somebody might leave their car right in front of your house and nose into your driveway a little bit. It's like, that's annoying, I get it, but we got to bear with that stuff, Volume issues, just noise on the second floor above you in an apartment complex. That's a tough one. That's hard for me personally. Irrigation drainage from your neighbor's front yard or whatever it is, or maybe the neighborhood cat or dog, left something on your lawn. Or all these are challenges of being in a neighborhood, but I think we can really show how Jesus would respond to them when we act in grace rather than just anger and frustration and all that. So these challenges are nowhere near persecution in the Bible, but we can apply these ideas from Matthew 5:39, where it talks about getting slapped in the face and turning the other cheek, and then again in Hebrews 10, where it talks about joyfully accepting the plundering of our property because we're so confident that we have a better and abiding one, or possession. I think those can be really helpful reminders when we find dog stuff on our lawn or our neighbor blocks the driveway, Make sure too that we are not creating those types of challenges for our neighbors. That's part of being a good Christian neighbor as well, just being really considerate and kind. And then lastly in this section, just make sure that if you do need to address a challenge because it's just becoming unlivable and your baby needs to get some sleep because there's a party going next door or whatever, send a note, maybe with a gift, and just be above and beyond gracious and kind and forgiving in your clear communication to addressing that issue. So recapping all this really quick, we had characteristics of Jesus, remembering names and details, bearing with neighborhood challenges, creating connection moments, even if they are small. God can really use those things. The Bible's full of those stories, right? And then kids and pets and things like that are really helpful, practical opportunities for connections with neighbors. So thank you guys for pouring into that and contributing to all this. We promised a third section in this video, proclamation, how to talk about your faith with your neighbors. But because we have covered that in the past, I want to just encourage you to catch up on those videos, earning the right to have faith conversations, asking good questions, how to share your own faith story, and in particular, articulating the gospel. Those would be the 4 videos that you want to catch up on. So the links to those videos will be down in the description below, and you can catch up on those whenever you're ready. Well, I hope at least 1 or 2 of these ideas has been really helpful and encouraging to you, and want to encourage you to go try it out in your neighborhood. Watch the Lord work, and let us know what he does as soon as you try it out. And Nancy, I just want to thank you guys for being with us, Suzanne as well. Thanks for being here today. Thanks for sharing your experience and your wisdom with us. And just know that we, the SBCC family, are going to be praying for you as you continue to take those steps towards Japan.
And thank you guys. Thank you to all you who are watching too, and know that we're praying for you guys, and all of us up here are praying together, and just loving the direction that God is taking SBCC. And I think it's a wonderful thing, and everybody is just so zealous to follow after what the Lord has for them here, and it's amazing to see. And God bless you guys, and thank you for this support and encouragement as we take these next steps.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, guys. See you next time.